Every day, we walk a path we barely notice. We call it routine. We label it a simple, unremarkable rhythm of life. But what if this rhythm is the blueprint of destiny? What if the small, automated gestures of our mornings, our afternoons, and our evenings are not just actions, but prophecies? This is the core tenet of a hidden philosophy, one that suggests our future is not a grand, unforeseeable event, but a slow, meticulously constructed consequence. It is a future disguised within the mundane fabric of our daily habits. The true architects of our eventual success or failure are not found in the seismic shifts of life, but in the quiet, repetitive taps of the finger, the almost imperceptible shifts in posture, the choices made on autopilot. The initial hook of this investigation lies in a startling paradox: the things we believe matter least, the 5-minute scrolls on a phone, the extra glass of water we don't drink, the one paragraph we decide not to write, are, in fact, the engines of our ultimate reality. We are drawn into the dramatic narrative of instant change, of overnight success, yet the reality is far more subtle and profound. We will explore the stories of individuals whose lives took radically divergent paths, tracing the fork in the road not to a single, explosive decision, but to a continuous stream of minor, almost invisible choices. These case studies will reveal how a 1% daily improvement, or a 1% daily decline, compounds over years to create entirely different universes for two people starting from the same point. The concept of compounding interest, so familiar in finance, is perhaps the most overlooked principle in human behavior. It is a slow-motion avalanche, where the tiny snowflake of today's habit becomes the unstoppable force of tomorrow's outcome. Our journey begins by shattering the myth of the big break. We will show that the big break is merely the moment when sufficient habits, built patiently and hidden from view, finally converge. It's the public revelation of a private process. The evidence suggests that if you want to predict a person's future, you shouldn't ask them about their dreams, you should observe their daily routine. The future, therefore, is not a grand mystery. It is merely the accumulated score of your most persistent habits, waiting to be tallied. To understand the profound power of disguised habits, we must first establish a baseline, a proving ground where variables can be observed and isolated. Our stage is set in the contrasting lives of three key subjects: Eleanor Vance, Marcus Thorne, and the control group, a collection of longitudinal studies. Each subject represents a distinct trajectory formed by the subtle mechanics of their daily lives. Eleanor Vance, a mid-career architect, started with every advantage: prestigious education, natural talent, and a competitive drive. Yet, after 15 years, her career is stagnant, her personal life is strained, and she feels perpetually stuck. We will meticulously document her seemingly small, self-sabotaging habits, the habitual procrastination of important, high-effort tasks for low-effort, distracting ones, the late-night, unexamined scrolling that steals essential deep work time, the subtle, continuous compromises on her fitness and nutrition that erode her energy levels. Her habits are a slow drain, a constant, low-grade fever that prevents her from reaching her potential. Conversely, Marcus Thorne, who started with fewer advantages, a modest background and a less direct path to his current success as a non-profit founder, now operates with remarkable efficiency and impact. Marcus's story is defined by his commitment to what we call keystone habits. His routine is simple, almost monotonous: a 5-minute review of his goals every morning, a dedicated 2-hour block of uninterrupted creative work, and a nightly accountability check on his commitments. His habits are not grand heroic acts, but quiet, consistent acts of discipline that create a multiplying effect across his entire life. The control group provides the scientific backbone. We analyze anonymized data from decades-long studies tracking thousands of individuals, cross-referencing their reported daily activities against their eventual health, wealth, and well-being outcomes. This data will reveal undeniable, statistically significant correlations: the habit of flossing, the habit of reading 30 minutes a day, the habit of saving 10% of every paycheck. Individually, these actions are trivial; collectively, they chart a course that defies mere chance. The stage is set for a deep dive into the psychological and neurological basis of this silent power, dissecting the loop that binds cue, craving, response, and reward into the invisible shackles or wings that carry us into our future. The central enigma we seek to unravel is the disconnect between intention and outcome. Why do so many individuals with clear, powerful goals, people who genuinely desire wealth, health, and fulfilling relationships, fail to achieve them, while others who seem less ambitious on the surface quietly succeed? This discrepancy forms the core mystery of our narrative. The initial problem is the goal illusion. Society, and most self-help literature, focuses intensely on setting monumental goals. We are taught to visualize the destination, to write the mission statement, to articulate the grand vision. Yet, time and again, we witness people setting resolutions on January 1st only to abandon them by February. The mystery is why this powerful, initial burst of motivation and intention evaporates, leaving behind only the residue of guilt and a renewed sense of failure. The answer, we theorize, is that they were focusing on the wrong unit of change. Our investigation posits that goals are, ironically, often detrimental to long-term success because they focus on the end state rather than the process. When the initial motivation fades, there is no system in place to sustain the action. The process-focused individuals, like Marcus Thorne, do not rely on motivation; they rely on their automated habits. They succeed not because they want the result more, but because they have fallen in love with the daily ritual. They have effectively outsourced their willpower to a dependable system. Eleanor Vance, in contrast, represents the typical victim of the goal illusion. Her habit of checking social media the moment she wakes up is a perfect example of a small, unexamined action hijacking her entire day. It shifts her from a proactive state to a reactive one. She intends to work out, she intends to focus on her challenging architectural design, but her established micro-habits, the automatic reach for the phone, the choice of a convenient but unhealthy lunch, are 1,000 tiny acts of self-betrayal that she rationalizes away as minor exceptions. The mystery deepens when we examine the neurological evidence that shows the human brain is hardwired for efficiency, making it a master of turning frequent actions into unconscious, energy-saving routines. This neurological drive for efficiency is the very thing that makes bad habits so persistent and good habits so fragile. We must find the leverage point within this hardwired system. The crucial discovery lies in shifting our focus from the action itself to the identity it forges. The first major clue is the subtle but profound difference between two simple statements: "I want to write a book," and "I am a writer." This distinction is the leverage point where habits move from external tasks to internal reality. The moment an individual shifts their self-perception, their behavior naturally aligns. This is the identity-based habit loop. When you believe, "I am a writer," the daily habit of sitting down to write 10 sentences is no longer a chore, it is merely an affirmation of who you already are. The task becomes effortless because it is congruent with your deepest self-image. For those who merely want to write a book, every writing session is a battle against internal resistance, a temporary performance for a future goal. We trace this clue through the journals of Eleanor Vance and Marcus Thorne. Eleanor's entries are filled with future-focused intentions. "I will start exercising next week. I need to get better at managing my time." Her habits are disconnected from her stated identity. Marcus's journal, however, rarely mentions the grand goals he is chasing. Instead, his entries focus on process and identity. "Today, I honored my identity as a disciplined thinker by protecting my deep work block. I reinforced my identity as a healthy person by choosing the stairs." The habits themselves are not the goal, they are the proof. The crucial discovery is that every single habit, no matter how small, is a vote for the person you wish to become. A bad habit is a vote for a degraded future self. A good habit is a vote for an optimized future self. The future is not built by sudden revolution but by a democratic process of daily votes. This insight reframes the entire struggle. It's not about achieving a finish line, it's about winning a continuous, internal election. This discovery provides the key to breaking the cycle of failure. Instead of focusing on the overwhelming goal of losing 50 pounds, the focus shifts to the microhabit that proves the identity of a healthy person, for instance, putting on workout clothes immediately upon waking. The sheer triviality of this act is its strength. It's too small to fail, yet it sets the course for the entire day. The crucial discovery is that the most powerful habits are not those that produce the largest immediate change, but those that produce the largest identity shift. To truly harness the power of habits, we must delve into their origin, understanding the 4 distinct layers of the habit formation process, which we call the 4 laws of behavior change. Habits do not simply appear, they are constructed, and often their deep context is hidden from the conscious mind. The first layer is the cue. Every habit begins with a trigger. This cue is often so ubiquitous, so contextually ingrained, that we fail to notice it. For Eleanor Vance, the cue for her habitual distraction is the simple act of sitting down at her desk. The physical context is the trigger for the psychological need to escape the difficulty of her work. We explore the work of behavioral scientists who demonstrate how environment is the invisible hand that shapes our choices, showing that the best way to break a bad habit is not to rely on willpower but to remove the cue from the environment entirely. The second layer is the craving. This is the motivational force, not a craving for the habit itself, but for the state it produces. Eleanor doesn't crave social media, she craves the feeling of temporary relief and mental ease it provides from the stress of her complex project. Marcus Thorne craves the feeling of accomplishment and intellectual clarity that follows his focused work block. The underlying context of all cravings is the desire to return to a favorable internal state. We examine how human biology prioritizes immediate gratification over delayed reward, which is the primary reason that destructive habits are so much easier to form than constructive ones. The third layer is the response, the actual habit execution. We analyze the principle of the law of least effort, which dictates that we will always choose the path that requires the minimum amount of energy. The origin of many of our daily failures is a lack of friction in the wrong places. For example, leaving a bowl of fruit on the counter, low friction for a good habit, versus keeping the TV remote within arm's reach, low friction for a bad habit. The context of our environment predetermines the level of effort required for any action. Finally, the fourth layer is the reward. This is the satisfying feeling that closes the loop and ensures the habit will be repeated. The reward must be immediate to reinforce the action. This deep dive reveals that the secret to forming good habits is making them obvious, attractive, easy, and satisfying. This four-part context is the engine of all sustained behavior change, moving the habit from a conscious decision to an unconscious identity. The study of habits is not without its controversies, leading to conflicting theories about the nature of change and escalating the stakes for our subjects. The dominant, yet flawed, theory is the 21-day myth, the popular notion that any behavior can be cemented into a lifelong habit in just 3 weeks. This theory is psychologically appealing but scientifically misleading, creating a false sense of certainty and often leading to premature abandonment when the goal isn't met. The stakes are highest for Eleanor Vance, who is now facing an ultimatum at her architectural firm. Her habitual perfectionism and procrastination have caused her to miss critical deadlines, threatening her career stability. Her current approach, which relies on the 21-day myth, involves massive, unsustainable bursts of effort followed by crushing relapse. This all-or-nothing approach is the theoretical conflict we must dismantle. The problem is that the myth focuses on the time spent, not the consistency achieved. True habit formation is not a function of time but a function of repetitions and the emotional quality of the experience. A deeper conflict arises in the philosophical debate between quantity versus quality of habits. One school of thought, often embraced by productivity gurus, advocates for a massive overhaul, tracking dozens of metrics. Our contrasting theory, supported by Marcus Thorne's success, is the theory of habit stacking, which champions a minimalist approach. Marcus focuses on attaching a new desired behavior to an existing, already cemented habit. For example, after I pour my morning coffee, existing habit, I will immediately write one sentence of my gratitude journal, new habit. This subtle rewiring avoids overwhelming the brain's limited cognitive resources. The escalating stakes for our subjects highlight this conflict. Eleanor, in her panic, tries to implement 5 new habits at once: waking up earlier, cutting out sugar, meditating, exercising, and reading. She is destined for failure because she is focusing on the sheer quantity of change, which maximizes friction and minimizes the likelihood of success. Marcus, however, is using the minimalist approach to introduce a new, mission-critical habit, mentoring a new colleague, by stacking it onto his Friday afternoon administrative review. The conflicting theories are not just academic, they are the difference between Eleanor's impending career collapse and Marcus's continued, quiet ascent. The key is to make the habit so small, so frictionless, that it is impossible to say no. Every great narrative has a point of no return, a moment where the main character commits to a path from which retreat is no longer a viable option. In the context of habit formation, this point is reached not through a single, dramatic decision, but through a calculated strategy of commitment devices and inversion. For Eleanor Vance, her crisis point arrives when she receives the final warning from her firm's managing partner. She realizes her career will end not with a catastrophic failure, but with a series of small, unexamined defaults. Her point of no return is her decision to implement an extreme form of a commitment device. She publicly posts a detailed work schedule, including daily progress checks, and authorizes her professional accountability partner to fine her a significant sum of money for every missed deadline or relapse into a bad habit. This leverages the psychological pain of loss to override the short-term pleasure of procrastination. The concept of inversion is key to this turning point. We invert the 4 laws of behavior change to actively make bad habits invisible, unattractive, difficult, and unsatisfying. Eleanor starts by making her phone invisible during work hours. It's moved to a separate room, maximizing the friction required to access it. She makes her procrastination unattractive by vividly visualizing the negative future consequences of her current actions, transforming the craving into a repellent force. The point of no return for Marcus Thorne is less dramatic but equally profound. As his nonprofit scales, the sheer volume of his responsibilities threatens to erode his focus. His commitment device is spatial. He rents a small, windowless office space exclusively dedicated to his 2 hours of deep creative work, devoid of any other distractions. This is a powerful form of environmental design that automates his good habits. By dedicating a specific space for a specific task, he minimizes decision-making fatigue and maximizes the likelihood of success. Both subjects, now at their critical junction, understand that self-control is a short-term strategy, but commitment devices, external rules that automate your decisions, are the true, long-term pathway to the future they desire. They are leveraging their present self to protect their future self from the whims of motivation. The halfway revelation in our documentary uncovers the most insidious and surprising aspect of the habit-future connection, the difference between motion and action. This distinction acts as a major midpoint twist, redefining what it truly means to make progress. Motion is the act of planning, researching, strategizing, and organizing. It makes us feel like we are making progress, but it carries no actual risk of failure and produces no immediate outcome. Eleanor Vance's previous failures were rooted in motion. She spent hours organizing her files, reading articles on productivity, and making elaborate to-do lists. She was busy, but she wasn't productive. She was preparing to act, but never truly acting. Motion is the habit of a perfectionist who fears judgment and hides in preparation. The midpoint twist is the realization that many good habits are actually clever disguises for motion. For example, spending an entire day setting up a perfect budgeting spreadsheet is motion. The simple habit of transferring $10 to a savings account is action. The brain rewards both motion and action with a small hit of dopamine, which is why motion is so seductive. It feels good without the corresponding risk of a real-world attempt. Our revelation focuses on the concept of the minimum viable action, MVA. Marcus Thorne's success is built entirely on MVAs. When he needs to start a new project, he doesn't draft a full outline. He simply performs the single, smallest action that initiates the final, desired result. The MVA for a difficult presentation is not prepare the presentation, but write the first headline. The MVA for a workout is not complete the full routine, but put on my running shoes. Eleanor, after her commitment device is set, struggles until she embraces this twist. She stops spending hours designing the perfect project management system and instead commits to the MVA of her design work, drawing 5 fundamental structural lines for her project. This radical simplification, the shedding of all unnecessary motion, forces her into the domain of tangible action. The twist is that the most effective habit is not the most complicated or time-consuming one, but the one that ensures you start doing the actual work, making the barrier to entry so low that inertia is overcome. It redefines effort. True effort is not the amount of time spent, but the quality of the starting action. As our subjects commit to their new pathways, we introduce new evidence from the field of psychology, the power of the Goldilocks rule and its deep psychological impact on sustained motivation. This evidence refutes the common belief that motivation is linear. The Goldilocks rule states that humans experience peak motivation when working on tasks that are right on the edge of their current abilities, not too hard to cause despair, and not too easy to cause boredom. This sweet spot is where deep engagement, or flow state, is achieved. The psychological impact of consistently operating in this zone is the self-reinforcing mechanism of a good habit. We observe Eleanor Vance as she applies this. Her original goal was to work on her complex design project for 6 hours a day, which was too hard. She consistently failed. Following the Goldilocks rule, she scales back her work habit to 2, highly focused, 50-minute blocks, just slightly challenging. She experiences her first genuine flow state in months. The feeling of competence and mastery that follows this flow state is a powerful psychological reward, far surpassing the fleeting pleasure of distraction. This feeling is what reinforces the habit loop, transforming the action from a necessary chore into an intrinsically satisfying activity. For Marcus Thorne, the new evidence explains his ability to continually scale his impact. As his routine becomes easier, he continually adds a small wrinkle of difficulty to keep the habit at the edge of his ability. Once his morning review takes 3 minutes, he adds a new, more challenging question to his review process. This prevents habit decay, the process where a fully automated habit loses its psychological power because it becomes too easy and unengaging. The psychological impact is the creation of a positive feedback loop of competence. Every successful, Goldilocks-level repetition of the habit releases neurochemicals that solidify the belief in the identity we discussed earlier. The brain begins to associate the cue, sitting at the desk, with the satisfying feeling of progress, flow state, rather than the fear of difficulty, procrastination. The new evidence is clear: the most sustainable habits are those that are perpetually slightly difficult, ensuring that the process of work remains rewarding. The future is built on an endless cycle of self-improvement that is only slightly taxing. In any investigation, there are forces that actively or passively suppress the truth. In the habit-future connection, this suppression comes not from a conspiracy, but from powerful cultural and economic narratives that profit from short-term thinking and the continuous pursuit of novelty. The most potent force of suppression is the industry of novelty. Media, marketing, and the self-help sector often suppress the truth that sustained success is boring and slow, by constantly promoting hacks, shortcuts, and instant fixes. This narrative is economically viable because it keeps consumers perpetually searching for the next big thing, always buying a new system instead of applying the simple system they already have. The truth of compounding habits is unmarketable because it requires patience and a rejection of the quick fix. We analyze how Eleanor Vance was a perfect target for this suppression. Her failures were always followed by a new subscription to a complex planning app, a new diet book, or a new course promising instant transformation. These new systems, while seemingly helpful, simply fed her existing bad habit of motion, spending time organizing change rather than making change. This narrative of constant reinvention suppresses the truth that mastery comes from dedicating yourself to a small number of core fundamentals, applied relentlessly. A second form of suppression is the societal worship of the gifted narrative. We are conditioned to believe that exceptional outcomes are the result of rare, inborn talent, rather than the product of invisible, decade-long routines. This suppresses the truth that nearly all peak performance is simply the result of better, more consistent daily habits than one's peers. By attributing success to genius, the ordinary person is absolved of the responsibility to cultivate their own disciplined routines. The ultimate suppression is the psychological barrier known as the valley of disappointment. Because the effects of good habits are almost invisible in the short term, people often quit before the exponential curve of compounding takes effect. They work hard for weeks, see negligible results, and feel disappointed. This feeling is the moment the truth is suppressed. They believe the system isn't working, when in reality, they are simply stuck in the lag period before the exponential results kick in. Overcoming this internal suppression is the final hurdle to behavioral mastery. The pursuit and confrontation stage is where our subjects must battle their most entrenched, self-sabotaging routines, the habits that have defined them for years. This is a battle against the neurological pathways that have been hardened over time, a confrontation of the self. For Eleanor Vance, the confrontation is with her deep-seated habit of seeking external validation through busyness, which manifests as her constant need to check and respond to email and messages, interrupting her deep work. Her pursuit involves implementing a highly focused, one-hour block of work before checking any communication. The confrontation is visceral, the anxiety, the phantom vibration of her phone, the powerful internal urge to prove she is responsive and important. This is a clash between her established professional identity and the new identity of a focused creator. The technique she uses is mindful awareness, or the just noticing technique. When the urge to check her phone arises, she doesn't fight it with willpower. Instead, she simply notices the cue, the thought, "I wonder if I got an email," acknowledges the craving, the desire for distraction or social connection, and then delays the response by 2 minutes. This tiny gap of awareness is the key to breaking the automatic loop. She is confronting the automaticity of her behavior, creating a chasm between the stimulus and the response. Marcus Thorne's confrontation is more subtle, battling the habit of complacency as his nonprofit achieves national recognition. His pursuit is to introduce a habit of radical self-critique. He intentionally solicits and incorporates negative feedback weekly, confronting the natural human tendency to surround oneself with affirmation. This habit is essential for preventing the decay that comes from believing one has arrived. The confrontation is with his own ego, forcing him to keep the Goldilocks rule in play even when success makes it tempting to coast. The evidence confirms that confrontation is not about brute force motivation, it is about strategic friction. By increasing the friction of the bad habit, moving the phone, creating an intentional feedback loop, and decreasing the friction of the good habit, they systematically dismantle the old identity and reinforce the new one. The pursuit is not a sprint, it is the daily, minute-by-minute battle against the line of least resistance. As the journey nears its end, the final pieces fall into place, revealing the full mechanism by which habits truly disguise and manifest the future. This is the integration of the identity shift, the commitment devices, and the continuous application of the Goldilocks rule. The primary integrating factor is the concept of habit tracking. For both subjects, the act of simply measuring and recording their compliance with their small, core habits becomes a powerful force. The visual evidence of a streak, a chain of successful, repeated actions, provides an immediate and highly satisfying reward that sustains motivation through the valley of disappointment. The simple act of marking an X on a calendar for a completed habit completes the entire loop. It is the satisfying reward necessary to drive the repetition of the entire process. Eleanor Vance's architectural project is now complete, delivered on time, and critically acclaimed. The final piece that cemented her success was the habit of habit stacking for recovery. She realized that the occasional lapse is inevitable, but the true mark of a successful person is not the absence of failure, but the speed of return to the good habit. Her rule became, never miss twice. After a day of accidental procrastination, her immediate next morning habit became, after I open my eyes, I will immediately write down 3 action items for my core project. This habit minimized the damage of the relapse and prevented a single failure from turning into a downward spiral. For Marcus Thorne, the final piece is the realization that his habits are now operating not just to benefit him, but to benefit his entire organization. His personal ritual of a 5-minute goal review is now a mandatory 5-minute team alignment meeting, effectively embedding his personal operating system into the culture of his company. His habits have compounded from personal progress into systemic, collective impact. The final structural piece of the puzzle is the realization that the compounding of habits is nonlinear. The results start slow, almost invisibly, but once the system is fully engaged, the rewards explode exponentially. This explains the sudden, seemingly overnight, success of Eleanor and the accelerated growth of Marcus's nonprofit. The future was always being built, it simply remained in disguise until the compounding interest reached its critical mass. The truth revealed is the central, unvarnished conclusion of our investigation: the future is not a destination you travel to, but an identity you embody through your daily system. Our primary conclusion is a definitive reframing of success. We conclude that achieving major goals is merely a lagging measure of the system, the habits, you have in place. The habits, therefore, are not tools to reach the future, they are the future in the making. Eleanor Vance didn't suddenly become a successful, respected architect, she became a person whose daily habits consistently aligned with the identity of a successful, respected architect. The award she won was simply the public acknowledgement of her private routine. The revealed truth is composed of 3 interconnected principles. Identity before outcome: habit change only sticks when it shifts from external action, I will do X, to internal identity, I am the kind of person who does X. The 1% rule of compounding: true transformation comes from the accumulation of hundreds of small, marginal gains. The 1% choice, the one small, better choice made today, is the true engine of exponential growth. The gap between success and failure is often no wider than the difference between a 1% gain and a 1% loss, repeated every day. The primacy of system over goal: you do not rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your systems. The secret to predicting and shaping your future is to focus relentlessly on optimizing the inputs, the habits, rather than worrying about the outputs, the results. This primary conclusion offers a profound sense of empowerment. Your future is not at the mercy of luck or grand circumstance, but is entirely within your control via the things you do today. The power of a single day's routine is the single most powerful, yet most often ignored, leverage point in a person's life. The future is an inevitability of the present. The disguise has been lifted. Following the revelation, we examine the aftermath, legacy, and modern ties of this habit-centric philosophy, demonstrating its applicability across all aspects of life and history. The immediate aftermath for Eleanor Vance is the maintenance phase. She shifts her focus from building habits to refining them. Her legacy in her firm is the establishment of a deep work hour, a commitment device for the entire office that acknowledges the power of uninterrupted focus. This demonstrates how a personal habit can scale into an organizational culture, creating a lasting legacy that outlives her personal achievements. Marcus Thorne's legacy is the structural stability of his nonprofit, built on the foundations of clear, repeatable processes. His focus now shifts to teaching the core principles, making the habits simple, stacking them onto existing routines, and continuously tracking progress. The modern tie here is to the concept of organizational behavioral economics, where the friction and design of the environment, the office layout, the default settings on software, the timing of meetings, are treated as the most powerful drivers of collective performance. We draw parallels to historical figures whose seemingly miraculous achievements can be dissected into mundane, daily routines. The intense, highly structured daily schedule of major figures in science, art, and business, the writer who produced a fixed number of words daily, the painter who mixed colors for an hour before touching the canvas, all confirm the same pattern. Their genius was their habit system. Their legacy is not the final product, but the process that created it. The final modern tie is to technology and the rise of data-driven self-measurement. Fitness trackers, sleep apps, and productivity software all provide the necessary tools to make the formerly invisible habits visible and trackable. The challenge of the modern age is not information, we know what to do, but the discipline to translate that knowledge into a consistent, actionable system. The legacy of this mindset is the realization that the self-improvement journey is less about discovering new knowledge and more about adhering to the fundamentals, day after day. Our investigation concludes with a concluding summary that reiterates the power of the invisible, and poses one final, lingering mystery. The summary is clear: your habits are not just things you do, they are the most reliable predictor of your future self. We have shown how the four-part loop, cue, craving, response, reward, can be systematically engineered to create automatic, positive change. We have demonstrated that the path to profound transformation is paved with tiny, frictionless actions, driven by a commitment to a desired identity and protected by strategic commitment devices. The grand, desirable future that feels impossible today is merely the logical conclusion of the small, manageable habits you ignore today. The power of compounding makes the future an inevitable score of your daily choices. The journey of Eleanor Vance, from stagnant failure to critical success, and the sustained impact of Marcus Thorne, prove that fate is not random, it is merely the delayed result of the mundane. The disguise has been removed, and the blueprint is visible. However, a lingering mystery remains, one that transcends the mechanics of behavior and touches upon human nature itself. Why do so many people, knowing the profound power of these simple truths, still choose the path of ease and postponement? Why does the immediate, fleeting pleasure of the bad habit so often override the known, guaranteed compounding benefit of the good one? The answer, perhaps, is that the human mind is perpetually biased toward the present, making the future, even when clearly visible, feel abstract and distant. It is the final, constant battle against the inherent flaw of human psychology, the inability to fully grasp the exponential power of time. The greatest challenge is not designing the habit, but believing in the future self enough to sacrifice the present comfort. The future is no longer a disguise, it is an invitation. The only remaining question is, will you accept the invitation and begin casting your votes today?